Strong silent type is sort of this relic of the past. He was silent because he didn't have the tools to process his world. But the future belongs to the strong aware type. This is a man who's conscious of his impact, aware of his emotions, and brave enough to be vulnerable. Manhood isn't a static trophy you win or and keep forever, but it's like a constant process of growth. One of the most masculine things you can do today is to have the courage to let go of the past and to evolve into the man the future needs. Welcome to the Last Thing podcast, where the last thing you want to hear is two more white cisgendered men explaining how you should treat women. My name is Ryan, and my co-host, as always, Josh. And today we're going to talk about the Manosphere. Let me kick it off with a more serious note, a story about a man named Elliot Rodger. He killed 6 people and injured 14 others in an attack motivated by his hatred of women who had rejected him. After committing suicide, he left behind a manifesto detailing his ideology of male sexual entitlement and his plan for retribution against women and couples. He is widely considered the founding figure and hero of the violent incel movement, and he was only 22 years old. This is like a very serious, very dark topic at times. This is mostly we do this podcast, like you've said, mostly towards a demographic of particularly young men who have been sort of swayed and led down a horrible path in life that leads to more ideological extremism and uh, sexism, misogyny, this sort of dangerous political conservatism that leads to horrible views and policies and bad voting and uneducated electorates. It's just a very large portion of these people are just being sort of fed these sort of toxic ideas, and we're trying to sort of battle this.
It, in my opinion, while it is a lot of things, and we'll get into a lot of the dimensions throughout this, I think something that a lot of people fail to realize is that it's a response to a change in outcomes. If you followed the advice of someone like Jordan Peterson, or I'm trying to pick a few of the more kind of sane ones, although there are
the lower level ones.
if you like the ones that are not as extreme, if you follow the advice of some of these men 50 or 60 years ago, it would be incredibly effective, partially because the motivations in society were a little bit dysfunctional, in my opinion, for like what it means to be in a polite, cohesive society, which is why that was not one. And we still don't quite live in one. But that advice would have been sound in the 60s and the 50s, in the 40s, 70s, 80s even. When we moved into the technological age at the end of the last century, what it means to be successful in the metrics that these people use for success changed. It changed dramatically. And with that, you had this same advice that had worked for generations and for centuries stopped being as effective. Just because you're bigger and stronger doesn't mean that you're going to get anything. You know what I mean? It means almost nothing in a modern society. Your connection to the values that they espouse are not going to lend you much success nowadays. In fact, many of the things that these people espouse themselves, and we'll go over some of these hypocrisies later, end up, you have to operate in opposition to your own values in order to succeed in the modern society. Look at someone like Andrew Tate. He's espousing like all of these, like, treat women this way, treat someone that way, treat someone this way. And what does he end up doing? he's on a laptop computer typing to other dudes pretending to be a woman. That's what, like, you actually have to operate in opposition to your own value system to succeed in the ways you're proposing we succeed.
Yeah.
And you could make that example for all of these guys. The guys that have the OnlyFans models on their podcast and basically berate them and try to humiliate them and get a sound clip that makes them look stupid.
Yeah.
These guys are the antithesis of what they espouse. So a big part of what the Manosphere is, in my opinion, is like a response to that, where it's like this last clutching to the set of values that used to work. Why doesn't it work anymore?
Yeah.
And you need look no further for as sort of like evidence of what I'm claiming to be true than the success of young women versus the success of young men in some of the very same metrics that the real metrics we would use for success, things like education level, things like citations in research papers, like your actual participation in scientific advancement of our society. Young women are doing dramatically better than young men they're in their 30s, where things kind of level off again for multitude of reasons. And part of that
Hmm.
is because young men are more likely to go to prison. Part of that is because young men are more likely to pursue different careers. Sure. But large swaths of that are because the motivation, the like selection process for success in our society has become a much more level playing field. You know,
Yeah.
if we were judging success off of like who can, you know, work in a coal mine for 12 hours a day in the Rust Belt,
Hmm.
yeah, men are probably going to be more successful in that field on average, which is what happened. But now in the Midwest, if we're going off of who can sell insurance the best or who can, you know, perform legal functions or whatever it is, like any of the tasks that are or do surgeries or be a practitioner in some other medical field, like these are things that women physically and mentally are just as or more capable of doing than men. And at the end of
Yeah.
the last century, we started giving them a fair wag at education, and we started giving them a fair wag in the workforce, and it shows. And so there's this like last grasping to like domineering manliness of like we should be at the top of society, coming from, yeah, not really coming from young men, but being espoused to young men by this generation of men that lived through it and
Hmm.
realize now that they're the ones tailing behind, that they're the ones lagging.
Yeah.
And so the manosphere is a reaction to progress, a
Yes.
negative reaction to progress, in my opinion. That's it. Like, and it's many
Today.
things. There's much more, and we're going to go over it. But that's like a
Right.
big.
Yeah.
The way I frame it is that like these guys are just. It's like you're drowning, and someone's like, they taught me all of this stuff on how to keep my head above water, but like the liquid that you're in changes, and it's like, okay, well, now you're in quicksand, so now swimming doesn't. Now you got to relax, you got to chill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Don't move as
Like
much.
the environment around
Yeah.
this group of human beings has changed negatively, such that the tools they have to survive in that environment no longer function properly, and the tools they're being given by this new generation of grifters and snake oil salesmen are tools that work to enrich the snake oil salesman, not tools that work to improve the lives of young men. And so, what we're here to do is to provide, hopefully, a frame of reference for these young men, but also the tools that will
Yeah.
work to succeed in society. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. We
we,
should explain that also we are both two happily married men with very good relationships with women and men in our lives. We had very different upbringings.
yeah, yeah,
I had I'll explain my side first. Is that like my upbringing was the more people I meet throughout my life now, I'm so surprised at how unique my situation was, which was a family of very empathetic and connected individuals who actually I think the our probably biggest our sort of biggest value in my family is probably support. There's a lot of support in my family, and my wife, who's had a very different life than I have, also just can't keeps talking about it, and the more I hear about it, the more I shouldn't take it for granted of how special these people were around me in my lives, especially a lot of the women in my family and even the men. Very healthy takes on what it is to be a person and what to do in your life. But you've had a very different life to start with, but had a very fantastic turnaround in terms of the place you came versus where you're at now.
I was raised by a pack of wild animals, essentially.
Yeah,
No, my upbringing was like very spotty. I come from a long line of like hyper religious people on one side, people that like became these MAGA maniacs, like maybe not quite like to the wearing the hat out in public level, but when they get to the voting booth, you know what I mean? And, my mom went to prison when I was 12. Like, I moved out when I was 16. I joined the military at 18. I had a really perfect trajectory to become one of these people, like to become a frustrated, hateful, misogynistic sort of clown. You know what I mean? Like, I was lucky I had a few very, very good influences in my life throughout each kind of phase. So I could kind of cling to for like the representation of how to behave in the world and how to treat other people. But yeah, I was in like a hurricane of dumbasses. It was crazy. Like I really was raised by people that were not well adjusted. And I was in situations with people that were not well adjusted as well, not just the people that raised me. And had a lot of like, good things happening to me as well. It's not like I was,
yeah, yeah,
it wasn't like a completely horrible youth, but it was definitely interesting and wild.
yeah, yeah,
And so like I come about this I come about this from like the perspective of like I lost a lot of my friends to this type of ideology. When I was
yeah, yeah.
younger, it wasn't called the Manosphere, but like I had like a lot of times when I was like out at the bar or when we had girls over to one of our houses when I was in the military or something, and I had to be like, "Hey, man, like nowadays the kids say you're scaring the hose."
Yeah,
I had to say that to my friends a lot. I was around these types of dudes that were like, we were all like trying to hook up, like we were all trying to get girls and stuff like this.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
These were
yeah.
dudes that were like willing to really be nefarious characters in a way in an effort to do that. And
Right.
for whatever reason, and the same thing goes for like religion, for whatever reason, it just didn't stick with me and it like didn't sit right with me. And I was able to kind of like avoid the main grooves that people kind of fall into when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But I've always recognized how dangerous it was. And I see the pipeline from being frustrated that you can't get the attention or the affection of women to
yeah,
becoming like a genuinely just a bad actor in society. Like there's a pipeline, and the pipeline that people call it like the right wing pipeline or like the all right pipeline or whatever it is, but like that pipeline isn't the media ecosystem. It's like a feeling inside of a young man where I can't get women to like me. I can't even get one woman to like me. I can't get like the affection of the women that I like or whatever. I can't get the women I think I deserve. That is like the kernel that grows into this like tree of being a full on dumbass. Like, and
yeah,
if you're
yeah,
not very careful, or if you don't have the right influences around you at these sort of key decision points or turning points in your life, then you will grow into that full on like dumbass, and then you really will fail to get the
yeah,
attention of women, fail to get the affection of women, and that will sort of create a spiraling effect. Because, like it or not, if you're a heterosexual male, women or a woman is incredibly important. It's a grounding aspect of your life. We are not designed to go through lives as like a dude by yourself.
yeah, yeah,
We're talking about like things that have worked for hundreds and thousands of years. What has never worked is just being a solo dude. and trying to like navigate life like that. That's not going to work. You're going to have a very, I mean, sure, some guys might here and there, but on average, you need a good woman in your life if you're a heterosexual
Yeah.
man, and that which is the perspective that I can speak to. Um, and so presumably these young men are looking for a way to do that. And the reason we're doing this is like when we look online, all we see is like, you see the one-off odd guy that's kind of doing the right thing or whatever now. But the vast majority of the stuff that's online is like preaching bullshit to these kids that are desperate for something real. And
Yeah.
that was like why we mentioned that like we're both happily married, like with with our own houses and like lives and people in our lives that care about us and love us and healthy relationships or whatever. But like that's why it's like we have a set of values that we live by that operates in opposition to the set of values being espoused by the vast majority of what we see online.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Another point I wanna make is how like you and I and every other human on the planet, we're all born the same in that, you're not born to be sexist. You're not born to be prejudiced. It's like all learned. No human is innately prejudiced against you know different groups of people, although you could argue there's like a natural sort of part of humans to be afraid of people who are different. But
Yeah, they've done some of those
go up to
studies, and yeah,
go up to any child or any boy who has not really been exposed to this type of like ideology yet. They won't have this innate sort of feeling to be aggressive towards other people in that way. So it's all about your environment. It's the people you surround yourself with. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people also helps kind of filter out this this sort of toxicity and these sort of dangerous ideas. And I think it's like a healthy filter to surround yourself with people who actually care about you as a person and also have very empathetic views. Today we've sort of evolved into like a culture that understands that being man isn't about like power over others, but the quality of your power with them. True masculinity like has shifted away from like raw aggression and toward like higher order traits of like compassion, humility, and the kind of deep self security that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Um, we've had to redefine courage. Like, I mean, I say redefine, but I mean you could say this is always supposed to be the meaning of
that's an
that.
interesting it's an interesting aspect of it is that like what you're saying is like to redefine um like you're saying redefine courage. It's a redefinition of many of these things is effective because a lot of the
Yeah.
things that they're talking about in these like manosphere types of sermons or whatever they're giving is that like
Hmm.
you have to do hard things. Yeah,
Yes.
like like working out and like getting fit, getting in shape, being able to fight, being able
Hmm.
to defend yourself, like all of the like getting smart or whatever, making money. These are hard things, and that's good, and that's true. That's part of being a man is being able to do the hard thing. But the hardest shit to do in this world is to be empathetic, is to be kind, is to
Yeah.
be understanding, is to be patient. Like these are infinitely more difficult than getting in
Yes.
shape. Getting in shape is hard. Don't get me wrong, it requires discipline, but it is way more difficult to be disciplined in your interpersonal relationships and to be
Hmm.
disciplined in the way that you treat other people. And that to me,
Real
like masculinity really hinges around.
Yes, real courage is action in the presence of fear, not the absence of fear. And we were told this sort of old world thought of what a man should be and what real courage is about like, yeah, not being scared, hide your feelings, be tough, be strong in the physical sense, and things have shifted. It's being scared of the unknown but standing up anyway, to defend the disenfranchised and using your strength to make sure people around you feel heard and welcome.
Yes.
True bravery isn't conquering the frontier, it's the quiet, confident leadership of a man who respects himself enough to respect everyone else.
Hey, you got me thinking.
And
You got me thinking of Thoreau quotes, baby.
yeah,
Yeah, you said, fear, like courage is action in the face of fear. You know, Roosevelt said, "There's nothing to be feared but fear itself." But he got that from Thoreau. Well, most people think he got it from Thoreau, who said,
yeah.
like, the exact quote is, "Nothing is so much to be feared as fear." You are touching on like a pivotal point in what we're talking about for young men, which is like if you find yourself like in the situation and take fear out of it to put in another emotion, put in like aggression or something, your ability to feel that aggression is human. You know what I mean? And then your ability to conquer that aggression or to push it out into a positive way. That's what being a man is. That's the ability to take the natural feelings or emotions or things that you're want or whatever, and to turn those into positive behaviors. That's manliness, in my opinion.
Thoreau would be well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't know if I've added to this. I should have added. I mean, we'll talk a little bit
Throw
about
in
like
every episode.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit about like better influences and stuff, but definitely Thoreau should be thrown in there. And there's also a book I don't have because I packed my books away. But let's let's talk about sort of these sort of two kind of connected things of like there's the manosphere and there's like the incel movement. We talked about the manosphere being like this like philosophically old worlds grasps on like aggression to gain power and strength and respect and whatever. But like the sort of more literal like internet definition would be like a massive loosely connected collection of websites, blogs, social media communities that focus on masculinity, mostly have like misogynist ideas and opposition to feminism. Includes everything from like pickup artists and men's rights activists and fitness influencers, sort of red pill quote philosophers and all that. And it sort of began in the sort of early 2000s as like a combination of like legitimate men's health forums and like dating coaches sharing tips on how to talk with women. Like, the 2008 financial crisis, the tone shifted and moved from how do I improve myself to why is the world and women rigged against me. It evolved into the red pill ideology, which is like a reference to the Matrix.
It should be mentioned. I turned 18 in 2008. So
Yeah.
as this change took place, I was a young man. I was in the dating scene. I watched this
Yes.
change take place. I knew these guys. And I mean, we all
You,
know
yeah,
these guys now, but like I was like in it, watching it happen before my very eyes. And I was in a hyper
exactly.
masculine
Yeah.
career field. I was in special operations in the military around these fucking guys. The guys that are doing the preaching now, I watched them turn from like normal dudes who loved their mommy and could barely do their own fucking laundry to like
Yeah.
real true maniacs.
The incel movement, incel being short for involuntary celibate, basically men who
Got
who
themselves
they
out.
they really want to have sex with women, but they're just not letting them. This is a specific subculture of the manosphere composed of like men who identify as they self-identify as incels, their inability to find romantic or sexual partners. Unlike other parts of the manosphere that focuses on like leveling up to attract women, the incel movement is defined by a sense of biological fatalism and deep-seated resentment. This is what led to fucking Elliot Rodger killing a bunch of
Yeah,
people.
this is this exact stuff. And it's like, I mean, this is
Yeah,
like, it's funny because incel is funny and it's easy to like make fun of someone that is an incel, especially
yeah,
self
yeah,
proclaimed. But like, what's the hard thing to do? Like, what would what's the thing a real man would do is to like empathize with these kids and say, like, listen, man, if you're having a hard time making friends, if you can't get laid, if you're not making very much money, if you're not making any money, if you're having a hard time getting an education, like, That's a tough situation to be in. So like only allowing the Andrew Tates of the world to empathize with at all with these kids is, or with these young men, that's a recipe for disaster. So like what we have to do, which is hard, is to say like,
Yeah.
listen, if we don't take these guys under our wing and teach them a better way, then the only way they have, well, one of the only ways they'll have left is to go that route of like hyper misogyny and like sort of resentment towards the world. And some same thing with like stochastic terrorism. If enough of those young men do that, some of them will be shooters. Some of them will
Yeah.
be beaters. Some of them will be rapists. Many of them will be victimizers in other ways. And if they can't do it in those ways, they'll get to a position of power otherwise, and they'll take advantage of it in that way as a
Mhm.
from this resentful, spiteful perspective.
There
So we have to take these young kids, these young men, under our wings. We have to teach them a better way to behave in the world in a way that will effectively help them.
there is a man who I think did a TED Talk, and he also gives talks around the whole country. He's been doing it for a while, has been a very strong advocate in face of mental health issues. He is a guy who, when he was in high school, was gonna shoot up his school. But there was one person who actually connected with him and talked with him about his own mental health and issues and anger of what he was going through in the moment, that he didn't go through with it. And he almost nearly walked into a school and shot as many people as possible. If you see anybody in your school or anybody in your environment, whether it's at work or at home, people that you see often, it is a good idea to connect with them in some way or make sure that they're doing okay rather than just making fun of.
I was on a kill list. I was on a list. Dude was going to come into the shop and shoot a bunch of people. I was like number 19. So they probably would have gotten him before he got to me. But I was on the list. And it's because I was like participating in like a bullying culture, really. Like I wasn't necessarily like the bully, but I was accepted by the bullies. I wasn't standing up for the people that were getting bullied.
Right, right.
And he was getting
Yeah.
bullied in a way that was like harmful enough to him as a person to make a list and have a plan to come into the shop and kill a bunch of people. And he told someone about his list. He's like, oh, he made a remark about the list, and someone was like,
Mhm.
that doesn't sound good. And so they told the authorities, and the
Yeah.
security forces like investigated him, and he ended up getting
Mhm.
kicked out of the military for that. But like that was an eye-opening moment for me as well, where I was like, oh shit, like you don't have to be the guy doing the bad in order for this stuff to like have ramifications for you personally or for people you love.
Yeah.
Put in that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
aside.
No, yeah,
Also,
that's
that guy ended up working at Remington,
oh,
just
okay.
as a bit of commentary on the society we live in.
Yeah, yeah. Didn't do a background check on that. Ironically, the term incel was coined in the late 1990s by a Canadian woman who's named Alana. She started a supportive, inclusive website for anyone struggling with loneliness. However, in like the mid 2010s, this term was hijacked by extreme male-only forums like 4chan and Reddit. Now banned, Reddit incel
So
groups.
now, where did 4chan come from?
Yeah, 4chan is a really that's a
Because now
really
we're getting into the Epstein file,
fucked up. Yeah,
and now we're
yeah,
starting,
yeah,
and now we have to start making the connective tissue between someone who's like a serial victimizer and a child rapist and a child sex trafficker in Jeffrey Epstein,
yeah,
and a website that was made they had a big hand in the what was going on this website that was affecting all of these young men. So who do you have starting even back then? Who do you have influencing all of these young men? A fucking rapist. So it's like these guys are on this website memeing it up with, you know, completely oblivious to the fact that they're participating and then they're being influenced by this ideology that is beyond. I mean, toxic is not even. I mean,
yeah.
criminal. Like criminally
Evil.
toxic, evil.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like it transformed into like this radical ideology based on the black pill, the which is the belief that you aren't born with alpha genetics, height, jawline, race, that sort of thing. That you're like doomed to a life of misery or something. The movement has linked to multiple acts of real world violence, and it often, encourages and dehumanizes women. referred to as foids or something, and successful men are chads. Is what they say.
Damn. Binary. They're breaking that shit down into the binary. I did.
Yeah,
I grew my beard out for this episode specifically for that reason. I shaved, yesterday, but I willed my beard into existence overnight.
yeah. Um, so the history of these movements show like a clear trend that they take real human feelings of loneliness or economic anxiety and weaponize them. The Manosphere provides the reason, feminism destroys like the natural order or whatever, and the incel movement provides the rage that the world is inherently unfair and that women are the enemy. Together they create like a pipeline that moves young men from harmless self-help videos to dark exclusionary worldview that makes genuine connection and happiness almost impossible to achieve.
Like, yeah, the traditional things we associate with masculinity have a role to play in being a man. Hey, I've run a marathon. I have kettlebells. I have rings in my shop. You know what I mean? Like, I drink protein. Like solid. Like, I can fight. I do jujitsu. Like, I have a gun. But
Sure, sure.
and those
Yeah.
things are valid. Like, if that is a part of being a man, but that's just as much a part of being a woman as well. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, none of these things are just for men, but like, yeah, I do concede the point that like traditionally masculine things have a role to play in being a man in even in a modern society because, and this is mostly because we go back to the original point. If you're a heterosexual male, which is really the only point of view that I can speak to specifically, although good advice is good advice, getting the affection of a woman is important. And on average, women are going to want someone who at least cares about their body, whether you are getting, big and ripped, or if you're just staying moderately in shape, or if you're just keeping your heart healthy enough to live a long life, whatever it is for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that is important in life, and in getting yourself a mate or getting yourself someone to spend your life with. But all of those traditionally masculine things are really only, if that's all you have, I hesitate to call you like a real man. Like, if you have no sort of empathy, if you have no kindness, if you have no capacity for critical thinking, if you can't read, if you're like just an illiterate dude that like can barely read, they make those jokes on the videos where like you show your spouse or your boyfriend or whatever a video and it takes them like 35 seconds to read two sentences. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
those things to me are part of being a man as well. It's like, and above all of that, it's being able to take those things, whether it's the masculinity side of it, like the big, strong, toughness kind of thing, which is typical shit we think of when we think of like old school traditional man, like Tom Selleck type
Mhm.
motherfuckers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's being able to synthesize all of those things with all of the other side of the spectrum type stuff, with being able to like empathize with and be kind to and respect others and influence the world in a positive way. You have to be able to synthesize all of that together. And
Yeah.
then when you have all of that, when you have that fucking Kamehameha ball in your hand, you have to be able to shoot bad people with it. You have to be able to shoot down bad ideas. You have to put it out into the world in a way that is positive. And if you can't do that, I hesitate to call you a real man. I think of,
Yeah.
if you had all of that and you kept it to yourself and you went out into the woods and built your own cabin and died alone in it, I mean, sure, some people will say like, yeah, you're one manly guy. You backed out. That's cowardice in my opinion. And
Yeah.
that's why, like, you asked me to do this. I hesitated from a certain perspective, but there was another part of me that said, listen, man, this is the battlefield of ideas is online. And if we want to push the needle in the right direction, we have to participate in the battle. And
Yeah.
that's what we're doing here. So like, that is what being a man to me is being able to subvert the traditional things while using them, being able to subvert the negatives of
Mhm.
and being able to push forward in a way that's positive.
Yeah.
And that's a great definition for a woman too. So it's kind of useless, but like it's more like just
Yeah.
being a
Yeah,
good
sure.
person is what I think of as like a real man is a good person. Like if you like, I'm not even gonna name specific people, but like there are a lot of people that are out there act. they're big men, like they're a real man, and that they're what an example of what a man is. Buddy boy, if you don't cry when you see a video of like a cat and a dog laying together on Instagram, I hesitate to call you a real man because like
Yeah, yeah,
you're not connected enough to the human experience. Like being a human is a visceral thing. Like if you don't look into like if you can't make a fire and like look into it and just be like, this is what it's all about. What are you doing, big dog? You can't like hear like a Jason Isbell song and just like well up with tears. What you're not experiencing life for everything that it can be. And that's what we're here for. Like that's what
yeah.
if you're
So
asking for a definition of what a man is a human being that's doing his best on earth, like, or off
yeah,
earth, I guess, if we end up leaving.
the
But
the va-
that's what it is to me.
the vast majority of these positive qualities we're going to be talking about can be applied to any woman, any person, any non-binary, trans, whoever you
What
are.
do they call them?
They are
NBs?
applicable.
No, that's not in my backyards. What are the non-binaries called?
NB, NBs,
NBs. NB. Yeah,
NBs,
non-binary. NB. Yeah.
like NB
Yes.
non-binary.
Yes, exactly. I like it.
Nice. Yeah, whether you're NBs or you're woman or you're man, a lot of these aspects will be applicable to that. But in terms of like what you're talking about a man, it does there are a lot of sort of through lines from the past in terms of like being a protector, being a, a survivalist or a provider or whatever, those through lines are still somewhat connected into what a traditional man of this modern age could be and should be or whatever. But it's also about the levels, like you're talking about. Like you can have a gun, you can protect your home, you can work out, you can do all this and stuff, but you can do that on whatever level that you feel comfortable with, like you said about like working out. Like if you're working out to like look good, that's great, but you could also be working out just to be healthy, and that could be almost anything. That could be just taking a walk every day, going to the gym and doing a couple exercises for at least like 20 minutes is, every day, like things like that. Like you don't have to, we're not putting you in a box that you have to do exactly these things that all of these men are doing, which is what a lot of these people in these sort of circles of the manosphere are selling these people. It's about self-improvement and becoming the best person you can be in whatever ways you can make that happen. As long as you're trying, you know, it's not hard to be seen by doing that. And when we're talking about like masculinity, of course, yeah, that also sort of
That word in and of
transcends.
itself is like a whole box
Yes, that
can of
it
worms, you know?
it's a whole thing. Well, and that's the thing is like, so there's like this sort of controversy about masculinity, and when people talk about toxic masculinity, a lot of people are quick to jump that that's a bad thing, and like, no, don't talk about. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity or whatever. And it's like, no, we're not saying that masculinity is toxic. We're saying that masculinity that is bad. There's different layers to it, and
I've
we're
had that
talking about
exact
the
argument
bad
with
sides of it.
someone, and you know how I won them over with the argument? Weapons. It's like, so you're saying that weapons are good? And they're like, well, weapons are whatever you do with them. Oh, so is masculinity. Like these things
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are typically associated with
yes,
like the word masculinity, which is just a word and a social sort of thing. It's the same exact logic where it's like,
yes,
it is a group of things we're just defining, and the application of it is what determines whether or not it's toxic.
exactly.
Jumping to like
Yeah,
and toxic masculinity is that's my bread and butter, baby.
yeah,
That's the fire I was forged in.
hell yeah, yeah. It's what you do with it. Yeah,
It's
it's
also
how you
toxic
use it.
masculinity. Most of those things, it's the gayest thing you can do. Like the most
Yeah,
toxic masculinity, like the most toxic masculine environments I've ever been in are so much suppressed homosexuality. It's like
yeah, yeah,
the Christopher Hitchens quote where it's like anybody that wants to like persecute or like submit someone for doing something, it has an innate desire to do it themselves. So it's like you like someone saying that like, oh well, that's not bad or that's not toxic is like that's because you want to do that, you know, like that's just because you want
hmm
to behave in that way, and so you're trying to like shout down anybody contradicting it.
Yeah, you're trying to overcorrect to make sure that nobody knows that that's how you feel.
Ironically, I just use like Christopher Hitchens has a lot of like misogynistic quotes. So
Yes, yeah, I was just thinking of that too.
I'm not like signing off on him. Like, but
Listen,
he's a very witty guy.
what you were saying was good, and that
I
is a
love
good
Christopher
take from
Hitchens and
him.
everything he said.
No, Christopher Hitchens is notoriously not the best person to align with on most of his positions.
Yeah,
But listen,
he had a very agitative way of behaving in the world, to say the very least.
the Hitchens, the family, in general, have always been pretty aggressive on their takes, I think. But let's talk about we'll talk a little bit more about like the history of this sort of tough man history, this sort of past of what it is to be a man in the early days of like the American frontier. We'll go as far as like, America, early America kind of stuff. This goes back so much further, but I don't want to
We
go
have
to the
an
dawn of
we have
man.
an iconography of this sort of thing in our culture, though, and it does what
Yes,
like
yeah,
the time period you're talking about really is a lot of the specific things we think of in this kind of traditional way in our country do start in like kind of this frontiersman
yes,
kind of like
yes. In the new world,
Paul Bunyan type shit.
when we came to this new world, this is just a landscape of dangerous terrain and nature that you had to kind of conquer if you wanted to survive there. So that kind of shaped of how these people started. Masculinity was like essentially a survival tool during these times because the world was physically dangerous and unpredictable, and being a man meant like being a utility, the muscle of and the wall against the elements. So this required a version of manhood that was rigid, stoic, and intentionally exclusionary, where survival was the only metric that mattered at the time. As society became more structured, toughness was codified into a specific social script to be the head of a household. Men were expected to trade their emotional depth for absolute authority over the domestic sphere. You didn't discuss feelings, you provided, you protected, and controlled. It was a bargain. Men held the power at the home in exchange for carrying the crushing physical and financial weight of the world outside. Transitioning into the modern era, the Manosphere isn't like a new revolutionary movement. It's a defensive, reactive response to a world that no longer rewards these 19th century silos. In a world of desk jobs and modern infrastructure, the frontier protector is obsolete now. The movement represents the last desperate grip on this power dynamic that is like slipping away as society is moving toward equity, as you were talking about, and the rise of female autonomy. The loss of traditional manual labor has triggered like this cultural panic. Many men are left holding the blueprints of for a social building that has already been demolished. Rather than learning how to build a new modern version of masculinity, the manosphere encourages them to scream at the wreckage, trying to force the world back into shape that it will never take again. So yeah, it's about adapting and evolving to the new world. Let's get into these specific individuals who are they're we're gonna go cover three people who are sort of the main characters of this
Three of the main
manosphere.
players.
Yes, so some of the most prominent names, at least. There's a whole lot more after, and I think maybe I'll look up and I'll add at the end of all this maybe an honorable mentions list of all the people that if you see their name come up, just look the other way. Don't even
Yeah.
follow. Don't listen to these people as thought leaders. Let's start with sort of we'll frame this as people getting into this movement. They don't just rush into hatred immediately. So it's this sort of this slow decline in their moral view, starting with like simple self-help stuff. So we'll start with Jordan Peterson. He serves as like an entry point for many men, offering a sense of order in this chaotic world, supposedly, by utilizing Jungian archetypes, biblical myths, and practical sort of clean your room, quote, self help. He builds a foundation of like personal responsibility. However, that often functions as like a gateway by framing life as an inherent hierarchy of competence. He subtly leads followers back toward rigid traditional social structures where masculine dominance is seen as a natural law rather than a cultural choice. So he is sort of like he functions as the intellectual entry point into this world. I think the biggest thing that people take from him, or that why people get sort of absorbed in him, that me being a young man in my past kind of related to, was the words he used. This sort of pseudo intellectual. I mean, he's a very intelligent person, but he's using it in this sort of twisted, distorted way. So when you click on a lot of his videos and you hear a lot of the things he's saying, you're like, oh, that's a smart man. And I want to be like that. So I'm going to like listen and absorb everything I can from this person. And a lot of these people don't realize how awful or stupid he really is.
Yeah, he's an idiot wizard. If
Yeah.
you're mildly intelligent, he basically is a wizard to put dumb shit into your head. Like he's
Yes.
like casting stupid spells on you. He's good at it. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if you put me on a stage next to Jordan Peterson and we debated our ideas, I would probably come out looking dumb because he is incredibly good with the sort of
Yeah.
mysticism of stupidity.
You would win. You would win that debate, but everybody watching, maybe who are dumb, would think like, "Oh shit, Jordan Peterson just owned him with this comment or here and there."
If I would have to resort to like, hey man, if we're talking about like old school being a man, like let's just fight.
Let's go out back and talk about this
You've
more.
upset me. No, like he's good. He's good at like, especially because if you watch him being in a debate, it's just word salad. If you watch him just talking into a microphone to an audience, that is where he shines. Because and a lot of these ideas shine when there's no one challenging them. If there's someone challenging them, you see like, what's the kid's name? Clavicular.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see him getting interviewed, and the moment the interviewer is asking questions he doesn't like, he just leaves. They can't face
Right.
scrutiny.
Yeah.
These ideas don't stand up to scrutiny, but they do stand up on their own very, very well. It's like a very beautiful house of cards. But if I'm like, hey man, what did you
Yes.
glue this together? It doesn't really work. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if just the littlest amount of scrutiny. And so that's kind of what like Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson stuff. He also has a very good habit of saying a lot of shit that is just absolutely standard good advice. Like make your bed in the morning. Okay, well, I'm
Yes.
not going to argue with you on that. So you'll be like, you're saying
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy shit to kids. And then he's like, I'm just telling them to make their bed. I'm like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the other stuff. And he's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, trans
This
people
is
aren't humans. It's like, that got him. That's what I'm talking about.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is your sort of kernel of truth thing.
Exactly.
Of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he's woven in these like dangerous ideas coming from like actual good advice, which makes him that dangerous.
The shirt is
He's a
99%
fucking
cotton and 1% lead.
yeah.
Like, is this shirt made out of lead? He's like, this is a cotton shirt, dude. Just put it on. I'm like, but I feel like it's going to poison me. Don't worry about
He's
it. It's cotton. Look how much of it's cotton.
he's a, he's a fucking charlatan who
Charlatan's a
took
good word.
the Deepak Chopra class of bullshit with hollow vocabulary to entice viewers seeking an intellectual or logical reason for why they are failing in their own lives socially.
Deepak Chopra's a deep cut, dude.
Yeah. Is
That's
that a
crazy.
deep cup now?
I think it's a deep cut for a lot of young men.
Nice.
They're not going to.
Probably, yeah.
Well, the question, did that happen, begs the question, what do you mean by happen? Because when you are dealing with fundamental realities and you pose a question, you have to understand that the reality of the concepts of your question when you're digging that deep, are just as questionable about as what you're questioning. You know, so people say to me, what do you believe in God? And I think, okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say as the questioner, well, we already know what all those things mean, except belief in God. And I think, no, if we're going to get down to the fundamental brass tacks, we don't really know what any of those things mean.
Peterson did not rise to fame through like his academic papers, but through like this calculated political controversy starting in 2016 regarding Canadian Bill C-16. It's a federal law passed in 2017 that added gender identity or expression to the Canadian Human Rights Act and Criminal Code to protect individuals from discrimination and hate speech. He then was thrusted into the limelight over his very antagonist view of this situation, and especially on a college campus, which then sort of made him like this hero of free speech or some kind in these sort of circles. He gained global notoriety by going off the deep end and refusing to use preferred pronouns for trans students, essentially.
Yeah. And listen, we have to be very clear about this because, like, I am an ally through and through. You got a friend in me, I promise. The way that laws work and the way that legislation gets passed can be, there's gray areas. You know what I mean? We're talking about social constructs. We're talking about language. And so, like, someone having like oppositions to like laws or to like, you know, some semblance of like free speech or whatever, like freedom of expression, that's all fine and dandy. Like, I want to make sure I'm not like pushing away kids that are like, well, he just wanted his free speech respected. If that were the case, it would be one thing. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about a guy disagreeing with the way the law was written and having like a conscientious objection to abiding by it. We're talking about a guy that didn't respect other human beings, and in his disrespect of other human beings and in his opposition to the way a free and functioning society should operate, he was, I think, fired from his job.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what I mean? Like, and he, that launched a career in the right wing speaking circuit for him. That should tell you something about why he was actually fired.
Mm-hmm.
It should tell you something about a lot of these guys, where they are respected generally and where they aren't.
Yeah, he sort of he turned this platform of like free speech against, you know, the gray areas of laws that are coming up in Canadian government into absolute just disgust for an entire group of people in the way he talks about them.
But he's a biologist, right? He must be a biologist, right?
This is not his area of expertise. He's like some I think he comes from the world of psychology, I think, right? So obviously that's where a lot of
philosophy, like religious philosophy.
Philosophy, a lot of religious philosophy, a lot of that's where a lot of sort of your Deepak Chopra woo woo stuff can come from, can stem from a little bit. So he successfully converted, you know, this outrage into a massive financial engine using like Patreon or YouTube to bypass traditional media and such. He frequently uses biological analogies despite not being a biologist. He's most famous for the lobster hierarchy, is what he calls it, to argue that social inequality and male dominance are natural and baked into our nervous systems. This provides a pseudoscientific excuse for young men to ignore systemic injustice and focus only on climbing the social ladder.
And so what that means is these hierarchies that I've been talking about, those things are older than trees. And so one of the truisms for what constitutes real from a Darwinian perspective is that which has been around the longest period of time.
I didn't know any of this. Now that I know this, I'm like a big fan of him. What a smart guy. The whole fucking premise, I mean, there are people that would concede the point of like baked into our nervous system. I know that that's a colloquialism, but like there are people that would be like, well, yeah, men have always been like in charge and shit. It's like, bro, you're crazy. Like you've lost it. Women have always had like a very prominent role in society, always, and even if like the people that were given like express like visual control over things, these men always had women in their lives. Like these men always were like under the influence of probably more intelligent or more savvy women throughout history. Sure, the social positions that were domineering over others were given to men traditionally throughout history, but that doesn't mean that that's baked into our nervous system. That just means that the prevailing society, the sort of the ethnic group that dominated the globe, was a patriarchal one. Patriarchal societies were not the only societies that existed. For sure, we know that. It's just those are the ones that ended up in control after we discovered steel and gunpowder. And so he's basically, I mean, that's kind of like the what's the fallacy that I'm thinking of? Sorry guys, I'm not a philosophy professor in Canada. There's like a fallacy of like these planes used to go off in World War II, right? And the planes would come back, and all the planes that came back
Yes.
had like bullet holes in certain spots. And so they like put the armor over the wrong spots because they made the wrong assumption based on which planes were returning.
Yeah.
When the
Is
actual
that
reality was, there's a fallacy associated. One of the
is that survivor bias?
I think so. Survivorship bias, I think, is it. So what
Yeah,
he's
it's
kind of doing, and it's not, maybe there's like a loose link here that I'm might be drawing connective tissue where it doesn't exist as strong as I say it does. But it seems like what he's doing with that is like the prevailing society, the society that ended up dominating, or many that ended up dominating around the globe, were societies with these characteristics. And so he's saying because of those societies taking over or surviving, that must be our natural state. That's just, I think that that's a fallacy. I think that that's logically inadequate, but who am I to say? I'm just some guy. Like,
yeah.
but that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, it's just because something worked like a long time ago doesn't mean that it's going to work today. The world has changed drastically. So he keeps sort of purporting this idea that, you know, that this sort of traditional values will always be
Another
the front
contradiction
run.
here that I'm thinking of now here on the spot is like, if that were the case, then in the 70s or 80s, whenever we gave women credit cards and bank accounts and started letting them participate in the workforce at equal, maybe not quite equal positions or whatever, women would still be doing worse.
Yeah.
Put all of the young women and young men into schools or into the workforce, the young men would just come out on top because it's baked into our nervous system, right? But that's not what we see.
Yeah.
What we see is that as equality of opportunity increases, the outcomes for young women get better and the outcomes for young men get worse. So it's like that actually kind of contradicts directly what he's saying there, that at least in the society we live in now, young women are way more equipped to participate in a functional way.
He has also claimed that the idea that women have been historically oppressed in appalling theory by erasing the actual history of patriarchy. He makes it like impossible for young men to understand the legitimate grievances of women, leading them straight into the arms of more extreme chauvinists like Andrew Tate.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt you here. Men have it baked into their nervous system to be in charge. And that's the way society has functioned. And we
Yeah.
don't live in a patriarchy.
Yeah.
A very solid, cohesive ideology you have there.
Yeah.
I can see no flaws.
because he
This is the
frames
smart guy?
every
This is the smart.
yes, this is the
This
smartest
is the
guy we have on
intellectual
this
side
list.
of the fucking Manosphere.
Yeah, this is the intellectual thought leader
Jesus
we have here.
Christ.
Because he frames every progressive social change as like this postmodern neo-Marxism, he creates this paranoid worldview. This leads to his followers to view diversity, equity, and inclusion as not as progressive or as progress, but as like deliberate plots to destroy Western civilization or something. Often leading them down a path towards xenophobia and nationalism. So then we move on to someone like Myron Gaines.
An
Let
American
me pull
hero,
up his
right?
thing.
He's an American hero, right?
Representing the Fresh and Fit brand, Myron Gaines repackages misogyny as objective truth through the lens of pseudo evolutionary biology. Another guy talking about biology who's not a biologist.
But I'm sure a lot of biologists agree with him, right? It's not like the entire ecosystem of professional biologists would disagree
Right.
with
Yeah.
everything he's saying.
Right. He popularized the concept of sexual market value, which treats human relationships like a commodity exchange by reducing women to a set of statistics in biological imperatives. He encourages men to view dating as a game of leverage and cold calculation rather than an emotional partnership.
I'm all for men treating women nice and, obviously paying for dates, taking them out, committing to them. I'm all for that, but I think that most women simply don't qualify for that. I think a woman's job is kind of to adhere to his program and get on what he needs done, because every guy is different, right? On what preferences they have, maybe with the way that she looks versus what she provides to him. But I think that's based on the guy, and it's the woman's job to figure that out.
I wasn't in at first, but I mean, he's piqued my interest now. These fucking guys.
So he has the Fresh and Fit podcast. He sort of positions himself as a truth teller. His facts are often cherry picked with pseudoscience designed to justify the subordination of women. He is sort of on his background. Did you know that? Do you know his background of what he was doing before this?
I'm gonna guess based on your reaction, he was sucking dicks on a corner somewhere.
Close.
On camera somewhere.
He was a special agent for Homeland Security investigations
That makes
for
sense.
quite a long time.
That actually makes sense.
He frequently references
law enforcement has misogynistic viewpoints. No.
Yeah.
No way.
He frequently references his background to suggest that he has a unique understanding of investigating human behavior and interrogating the truth. His podcast launched in late 2020, the Fresh and Fit podcast, capitalizing on the sort of isolation of the COVID-19 lockdowns. He targeted men who felt lonely or financially insecure, offering them a mix of fitness advice
He's a plant.
and with a red pill lens on dating.
He's a plant.
Yeah.
That's a plant.
His podcast signature After Hours show involves bringing a panel of women onto the set to be debated, often belittling them, creating viral clips of owning women with logic.
So women have been submissive, and they'll
Wait, hold on.
cater-
What'd you say? Excuse me?
Didn't you tell me to keep up when I lost my train of thought?
I'm saying a million things right now. Running a show,
So?
answering questions, dealing with
That was
11 girls
happening
plus.
too.
Just get the fuck out of here, dude. Just get out. Just leave.
Can I say
Just
something?
leave. We're not going to lower the IQ of the podcast for you.
I,
What were you saying?
These are the clips of him that I've seen.
Yes, those are a lot of viral clips that you'll see of him. Him versus like a panel of like 8 women. Listen, and I don't want to necessarily disparage everybody. These women are not on the smart side of the scale.
Well, yeah,
He's deliberately
he's bringing young women that are not equipped to have the debate.
no,
So that he
not
looks like
equipped for
he's
the debate,
more-
not even ready for these kinds of conversations. Yeah, they're just they want to do their own thing or whatever, and he's out here to like trap them and box them in and making himself look better than he actually is. This is like when, fucking Charlie Kirk goes to colleges to debate kids and then he looks like he's owning people.
Went to colleges.
Yes, yeah. We are Charlie
We
Kirk.
are all Charlie Kirk.
I didn't get that memo. I didn't know I was Charlie Kirk now.
You must not have heard the song.
So did you know he wrote a book? Myron Gaines wrote a book called Why Women Deserve Less. That's the title of his fucking book.
This is a fucking plant. I'm telling you. Now that I know this, everything else makes sense. I'm not even mad at the guy. He's just doing his job.
Yeah.
He's just doing his job. He's here. I mean, we have to facilitate a group of young men, we being like the U.S. government. We need an entire generation of young men that don't care enough about life or the people around them so that they will participate in what is essentially becoming an unhinged empire
right
in the United States. People that will join ICE, people that will join the military, people that won't dodge a draft, people that will vote in a way that participates effectively with the ideas they want. Now, I'm not even mad. He's just doing his job.
Yeah. He popularizes the idea of sexual market value, reducing women to a numerical score based on age and looks, while arguing that a man's value is solely based on his high value status, which is money, power, and the way you look. He openly preaches that all men are Johns and all women are whores, claiming that all relationships are inherently transactional. That's a deep root of some serious insecurity issues that he needs to work out to a therapist. Yeah. That is literally what therapists talk to with a lot of clients sitting down on their couch about how they have transactional relationships. That's bad. That's not good. If you hear that in your therapy session, or if you're talking with a healthy person and they're saying your relationship is a little too transactional, that's a problem. That's a little bit of a red flag there. Since 2023, Myron Gaines has increasingly moved beyond dating advice into extreme political territory. He hosted white supremacists like Nick Fuentes and has engaged in overt anti-Semitism, including performing Nazi salutes on camera and wearing apparel that mocks Holocaust victims. His quote interrogative style on the podcast often devolves into screaming at female guests and kicking them off the set for disagreeing with him. This teaches, impressionable.
I'm sure Jake Tapper put out a hit piece on this guy already, right? Because he's so worried. He's so worried about anti-Semitism and misogyny taking hold, right? I'm sure.
He's just waiting for things to go wrong and blow up. Then he'll write the book.
No, they work for the same motherfuckers. What happened?
So, this teaches impressionable young men that masculine leadership is synonymous with being loud, aggressive, bully who silences any woman who speaks up. Now we move into one of the worsts, Andrew Tate. Most people have heard his name and know kind of.
Yeah, this is low-hanging fruit.
So he represents the sort of more extreme end of the funnel where masculinity is equated with absolute material and physical dominance, and he markets this hustle culture dream of fast cars, cigars, and private jets to sell like this lifestyle where women are treated as property or accessories to status. He has this top G persona, which normalizes aggressive rhetoric and coercive control, framing the mistreatment of others as necessary byproduct of being a high-level man. This guy, oh my God. Talk about a guy who fell from the ugly tree and hit every branch down on the way. He is no person to talk about looks, first of all.
Chinless wonder.
Yeah, looks like Gollum.
No, we don't body shame. We don't body shame, except for Andrew Tate. Well, I mean, it's crazy that these perspectives are coming from people that are like, I mean, if you think that getting a sports car and a mansion and being able to paying women for their company, if you think that that's success, you're already so backwards that he's like, this group, this pool of men that are viewing this as the metrics of success are already so susceptible to stupidity because that's what they view as success. Like they've already expressed a level of ignorance that makes them vulnerable to someone like him. So he's actually like, he's like shooting fish in a barrel with this kind of stuff, because anybody that doesn't think getting a fucking sports car and a mansion is success, anybody that has like realistic and good value driven metrics for success, is already going to, it's a non-starter for them. So he's saying like, okay, well, this group of people already is susceptible to this type of like dumb fuck propaganda. That's who I'm going to go after. And of course it's going to work. And then when there are enough of those people doing it, then kids are going to see it and they're going to be like, okay, well, that makes sense, because fast car go vroom. You know what I mean? Like that's literally who you're appealing to.
I say all the time, your friends should bring out the worst in you. And when I say the worst, I mean, when you're with your boys and you're loud, and you feel aggressive and you're about it, and you'll talk to that bitch. Who cares if she says no? They bring out the worst in you because you don't give a fuck anymore. Because what used to happen evolutionarily is when large groups of men got together, you charged at the enemy.
Peterson has a much broader sort of age range demographic, and then Andrew Tate and Myron Gaines starts to narrow down in age when it comes to like their sort of intellectual development. These are young men who haven't fully developed their brains yet, and teenagers and
these guys are supposed to be like a launching platform to a Ben Shapiro, and then a Ben Shapiro sends you to, whatever the next level in right-wing ideology is. So it's like, these guys are, now they aren't intentionally doing this, but they're allowed to exist as a part of the right-wing ecosystem. You don't see these guys getting cast out by Fox News. You don't see these guys getting cast out by OAN, Fox News, and all of these right-wing legitimate, they're illegitimate in my opinion, but like the more legitimate side of the right-wing media ecosystem allows this stuff to exist, because they know that when someone grows out of that, they will be the next place that they go. And so these guys are basically the sort of like hatchery for right-wing extremists, which is why they're dangerous, which is why we're covering them. Because talking a 19-year-old out of following Myron Gaines, if I were spending 2 hours with a 19-year-old, I could pretty easily do that. But when he just eventually grows out of it on his own, he's going to take the next step into something that seems more respectable, that seems less immature.
Yeah.
A more mature version of the same ideology, I should say.
Exactly. Andrew Tate's fame was not accidental. It was sort of the result of aggressive multi-level marketing tactics, and that flooded social media in 2022 after his kickboxing career. His first major public brush with infamy was his removal from Big Brother UK in 2016, following an investigation into his conduct. He built a massive financial engine by charging thousands of subscribers with wealth creation courses. He incentivizes these members to flood TikTok and Instagram with controversial clips of him, effectively hacking the algorithm to ensure every young man with a phone saw his face.
Life for a man is harder than life for a woman. We need to have a lot of shit to be an important man. To be a woman, you need makeup. If you're truly beautiful, you don't need anything else.
He was the one that started this whole, he kicked off this whole Matrix metaphor, framing.
Everything about these guys is clownishly stupid, because the idea that the Matrix is what you're going to use to sell this ideology.
Yeah.
The fucking makers of the Matrix are like trans.
Yeah.
Obviously that has nothing to do with the ideology of the movie necessarily, but like, you have to understand the perspective that the movie's coming from. Same thing with like Fight Club. It's like, bro, this is a fucking commentary on how not to be. Like, you're supposed to learn the opposite and inverse lessons, and you're like essentially using it as a launching point for something that is the antithesis of what it stands for.
Unlike, Jordan Peterson Andrew Tate's rhetoric has translated into severe legal consequences, as in April of 2026, he remains under intense legal scrutiny in Romania and the UK on charges including human trafficking, rape, and forming an organized crime group. So he's accused of the lover boy method, seducing women into relationships only to coerce them into adult content production.
Which he then seduces men.
Yeah.
He operates the
Yeah.
laptop while they, he's like typing back
Uh-huh.
to these dudes. I mean, like
Yeah.
that is gay sex. If you're like sexting with a dude with like a woman intermediary, you're getting a dude off.
Yeah.
And listen, there's nothing wrong with being gay, but there is something wrong with being Andrew Tate and being gay.
Yeah.
You can't be Andrew Tate espousing those ideas and be gay and hide it.
Yeah.
And get it found out. Like everyone approaches the idea like, oh, he's a rapist, obviously bad. Oh, he's a human trafficker, also bad, very bad. Oh, he's organized crime. Somebody elect this guy to Congress. The problem really though, and the way that you would want to, and like, because I'm not trying to appeal to like a 35-year-old dude in this conversation. We're trying to teach young men that this shit is crazy. This dude was on the laptop typing to the dudes that thought they were talking to the woman on these like, e-chats where like a woman would basically be doing like OnlyFans content, but he is operating the chat. So he's like helping these dudes jerk off in the chat. And that's who your top G is. Like, what does G stand for? I don't know. That is crazy. The level in the hypocrisy for me, it's not obviously the worst part is the crimes, but the hypocrisy is the angle with which you can access young men, because young men are going to see the divergence from what someone is saying and what someone is actually doing, but only if you point it out for them, because they will ignore that hypocrisy unless you actually create connective tissue. I've created it for you. Have the connective tissue. You can move forward knowing. Like the guy is wrong on so many levels. And this should also speak volumes to like in an algorithmic institution or like application like YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, you have to really be able to like control your own participation, like to control what you see. You have to be proactive in that. If you're not, you'll fall victim to these types of guys, because if you can manipulate women, if you can manipulate the legal system, if you can manipulate the keyboard to get dudes off, then he can manipulate an algorithm. And like you said, it's not like it's not going to work the same for the next guy that does it, but there will be a next guy. There have been dudes that did this with like other programs, how to pick up chicks, or like obviously just every multi-marketing scheme ever. That the Thai guy that would like, he would like go and rent out a mansion and rent a bunch of cars, film it as if he had like created a bunch of businesses, and then he would sell a course under the, like with the insinuation that all of this stuff he was filming around was his. That was kind of like the blueprint that someone like Andrew Tate used. Andrew Tate just went into more of like a manosphere since that's what the episode's on. Like that's a good umbrella term for it. He took it in that direction rather than like the business direction.
Right. Yeah.
Not that they ignored the business aspect. Like they acted like they were teaching these young men to like be businessmen, essentially.
Exactly. So he targets lonely, directionless men by telling them that they're zeros unless they follow his specific hyper consumerist path. Now, this creates a generation of boys who believe that empathy and emotional vulnerability are loser traits, leading to a profound sense of isolation and social aggression. So, and one thing, about to move on from these dumbasses. I can't say necessarily about Jordan Peterson, although he's on like a separate level, but both Myron Gaines and Andrew Tate, neither of them are married. Neither of them are in healthy relationships. They do not have a partner that they love. That should be like your first sign of whether they should be a mentor in your own personal life for gaining a partner. So there's this we talked about the men aspect of this, and I don't want to speak for women in this next segment, but there's this whole thing about this trad wife stuff, which is honestly one of the weirdest corners of the internet. It's this hyper polished aesthetic subculture where women post videos of themselves making sourdough from scratch and hand stitching curtains, and all while preaching that their only natural purpose is to submit to their husbands.
Yeah, when I
If you
was
haven't figured out that trad wife is short for traditional
yeah,
wife.
when I was single, this was my favorite type of divorcee to date. A woman that gets out of one of these relationships is going to be one very open-minded individual. All of these women are like very living these constricted lives right now. When their kids are old enough and they feel like they can like launch themselves financially on their own, they'll divorce these guys, and then there's going to be a bunch of like 25-year-olds that are just chomping at the bit, and it's going to be a great time for all involved.
These women, there's a lot of these people that are cosplaying as like 1950s housewives,
They have the aprons on.
but
Yeah, dude. Oh yeah.
with a ring
Hell
light
yeah.
and a TikTok account. The absurdity is like off the charts. You've got women who are basically running like $1 million media empires, telling other women that having a career is unnatural and that they should just stay home and be
Your
sweet.
highest calling is doing not what I'm doing, but doing what
Yes,
you
yeah.
do.
It's total like total performance of dependency, usually funded by the very modern technology and independent income that they claim to be against. So like these high profile women leverage the red pill and trad wife niches to build this massive digital empire, by like validating the male supremacy sort of side of things.
And, we should. Sorry, I hate to keep cutting you off. I actually love to keep cutting you off because I like the back.
Sure.
We should note that like this is the same thing as like that kernel of truth thing. Everything that
Yes.
these
Yeah.
women are doing is valid, like behavior wise. Like if this is the life you want to live, if you want to be like in a traditional relationship, whatever, and you want to like you take care of certain things, your husband takes care of other things, and you want to make like sourdough bread and make your own butter from scratch.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
all like more than valid. It's cool. It's very, very cool. They're like oftentimes very useful skills. Oftentimes, like, I mean, and being around for your kids when they're young is great. Like, none
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
like none of that is to be criticized whatsoever. It's the connective tissue between these things and the right wing ecosystem, and then the hypocrisy between espousing those things while you benefit from the exact opposite, the antithesis.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
the
Yeah.
hypocrisy, and it's the connective tissue to like right wing extremism, racism, nationalism. There's a sub sort of like a an undercurrent in a lot of this. Not all of this. And that's why you'll see a lot of the women that are living these lifestyles, they'll be like, I'm um a bunch of emojis with like the transgender flag, the gay pride flag, a bunch of like other emojis that represent like equality and kind of things, iconography
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
think of as progressive. I'm a bunch of emojis that are progressive and equity based homesteader, not a cross and like all this other stuff homesteader. And they want to distinguish themselves from this crowd because they see the undercurrent as well. So making that
Yeah. Yeah.
distinction is hugely important. Like I'm not criticizing the lifestyle at all. We're criticizing like especially this like TikTok version of the lifestyle that is
Yes.
intentionally appealing to like a Christo fascism ideology.
Mhm. Yeah. The idea that they believe that all women should be this way and act this way. The submissive side of it, like we have nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with finding a partner who agrees with how y'all want to live your lives. In fact, that's a very important aspect to finding a person for you, is that you agree on the same things, you believe the same things. That's all good. That all, mostly depending on you know the behavior y'all agree on. Sometimes you might agree on the same things, but that won't really necessarily translate to a long-lasting relationship. But for the most part, if you're all on the same side, that's like the key to finding like the one, I think. At least one of the main keys. So
Yeah, like lifestyle compatibility.
yeah, lifestyle compatibility is important, but
Big part of it.
you shouldn't then tell people that you should be doing this and that, especially when you're not even really doing that and you're making money off of this and doing it on TikTok. It's crazy. Influencers like Candace Owens and Pearl Davis have successfully monetized content that explicitly attacks female autonomy, proving that there's like a high dollar market for women who echo manosphere talking points. So like in using high def aesthetics and floral dresses and slow living visuals, influencers sell the idea that submission is the cure for modern burnout, that they frame traditional 1950s roles as not as historical constraint, but as like this idyllic escape from the pressures of the modern workforce. You know, there's this myth of natural submission that, you know, this movement argues that a woman's biological purpose is to be a helper to her husband. You know, this suggests that women who desire independence or who or like a career is fighting their own nature, which leads to feelings of inadequacy and failure. It's the same. It's the same things that the manosphere is doing with men. You know, telling them that having empathy and compassion for others is a weakness in your male identity.
Yeah.
The same is happening for
And in the same way that like showing up to an underpaying blue collar job for 20 years is going to drive you crazy. Not everyone. Some guys can do that. Like it's like we're saying, it's like not all of these instances, but like if your prescription for the society is like I'm just going to work my ass off for the man, and in 20 years I'll retire and I'll be happy. That's midlife crisis prep. Get ready for your midlife crisis. We've all seen it a million times. In that the parallel there is like that's what I was talking about divorcees. Like this lifestyle is cool for a while, and then the man gets complacent with it, and then the kids get older, and then they need you less, and then you have no sense of like satisfaction and worth from internal. Your validation that was all external leaves, and so now your validation is missing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a story that's been told a million times. But like, that's frequent, and that's a big part of like the issue with this and why we moved away from it as a society in the first place. Not to say that people aren't happy doing it, but if everyone tried to do that, many people would be incredibly unhappy. And so they're prescribing something to people that doesn't work for most people.
This is like this is sort of related, but like if we're talking about, you know, toxic relationships and stuff, there's like a statistic or something, like a graphing that I saw a while ago that shows the rates of female suicide, and how there was in this graph there was a point that it dropped dramatically, and one of the correlating factors was at that peak of that moment was the moment that women could divorce their husbands and not be absolutely destroyed in their life by doing it. By that time, like female suicide started dropping dramatically. All these women who were stuck in these relationships could finally leave, and it saved a lot of their lives.
Yeah. That's why that Texas divorce law they're trying to do, or that they did, is crazy.
Yeah. So like promoting, you know, this total financial dependence is like a virtue that leaves women without an exit ramp, making them significantly more vulnerable to domestic abuse and coercive control. Erica Kirk, the wife of the late Charlie Kirk, as a high profile of the do as I say, not as I do trad wife movement here. Despite preaching that a woman's highest calling is as a helper at the home, Kirk, she's a doctorate holder and a high powered CEO with major conservative organizations like Turning Point USA. which that's also kind of shady.
I'm
How
sure Turning Point USA doesn't have any foreign connections either. I'm sure there's not any
yeah,
right-wing extremist groups in Hungary funding Turning Point USA, you know?
her
Right?
her content
Ryan, right?
her content often bridges the gap between standard conservative family values and more extreme manosphere rhetoric. She tells young women that careers are not a renewable resource compared to children, effectively steering them towards a path of like early domestic and domesticity.
Domesticity.
She utilizes her own professional power and public platform, both non-traditional for women by her own standards, to convince that other women should relinquish their agency, reinforcing Manosphere goals of returning to a rigid gender hierarchy. I kind of zoomed through that because I'm running out of time a little bit,
I mean,
but
what more is there to say, dude?
yeah,
She's on stage with pyrotechnics like 3 days after her husband died.
yeah, it's crazy.
And honestly, the connective tissue between like three-letter agencies, foreign governments, and her, along with how she met Charlie Kirk, it's incredibly suspicious. Like her entire life is just a very suspicious thing.
Yeah, it's
Which
very
obviously we're not
shady.
here to make allegations against, such a altruistic and virtuous individual as Erica Kirk.
Yeah,
The Drewski sketch, dude, the the Drewski sketch, that might go down in history as one of the most poignant works of satire that humans
yeah,
have
yeah.
ever created. Nothing Shakespeare did, nothing the SNL or Mad TV ever did, nothing Dave Chappelle on the Chappelle Show ever did. Nothing will ever. It's so good.
It's so good.
He
It's
he loves
really good.
art. Like
Yes.
there's a type
Despite
of
his face size,
there's a
he looked spot on.
visual conformity that people
His
on the right participate in that you can easily satirize. Like you can
the
really get into
last
it.
the last few things he did with makeup, his makeup team is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Whoever he has, they're like Oscar-winning
Yeah,
makeup.
when he went to that NASCAR race,
Yes, as the white sort of redneck. Yeah,
so good.
that was incredible. That was amazing. You know, real a real leader doesn't demand respect through like intimidation. He earns it through integrity and being the first person to step up when things get difficult. It's about being the person who creates a safe environment for everyone to thrive. And the new sort of modern toolkit from what I can think of as sort of the major things. And if you have anything more to add, feel free, is empathy, compassion, and respect. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that toolkit, but these are sort of the three things I want to cover first.
Competence.
Competence, yeah.
You can't effectively enact any of those things unless you are like a competent human being.
Yes.
Yeah, empathetic and kind or whatever as you want. If you don't have the ability to like make change in the world, which is kind of what these guys are talking about when they use the word status, like they're misusing it and misappropriating it for sure, but like you do have to have some capacity to implement change and to just influence the world around you. Because you talked about being a protector. Well, that can mean a ton of things, and someone feeling safe with you can mean a ton of things. But there are attributes that come along with being a protector. There are attributes that come along with being empathetic. And if you don't have if you aren't in a mental state yourself, if you're not stable yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to facilitate stability in others. And so like part of that, and this is like the Jocko Willing extreme ownership, personal responsibility type stuff that people get into. It's like, that's a big part of, it's a big part of the kernels of truth that they're using, I should say. Competence.
Yes, that is a good qualifier for these things, is that you should want to be competent in these aspects of your life. That empathy, this isn't like a soft skill. It's high level cognitive ability. It's the power to step outside of your own experience and actually understand the perspectives of people who aren't like you. Without empathy, you aren't a leader. You're just a person shouting into the void. Compassion is like the strength real strength is shown on how you care for the vulnerable. Toxic masculinity tells you to like own or protect as a form of possession, but true compassion is caring for others without needing to control them or getting anything in return. In respect, this is the bedrock of any healthy relationship. It means treating your partner as a fully autonomous equal and with their own dreams, thoughts, and agency. If your manhood requires your partner to be smaller so you can feel bigger, it's not masculinity, that's deep insecurity. The strong silent type is sort of this relic of the past. He was silent because he didn't have the tools to process his world, but the future belongs to the strong aware type. This is a man who's conscious of his impact, aware of his emotions, and brave enough to be vulnerable. Manhood isn't a static trophy you win or and keep forever, but it's like a constant process of growth. One of the most masculine things you can do today is to have the courage to let go of the past and to evolve into the man the future needs. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts or final words that you want to?
Only that I think this was the diagnosis episode, and I think we should do a prescriptive episode. So we talked a lot about
Let's
the
do a
tools and
follow up.
stuff. Yeah, we did talk a lot
Yes,
about the tools and stuff that like a young man would need. But like if you're a young man that can't get laid and he's pissed off at the world, and justifiably so, I'd be pissed off too.
sure.
This episode is going to help. Probably you will probably like identify with a lot of this stuff, and hopefully this keeps you from stepping in traps,
Yeah,
especially on the internet, which is what the whole reason we're doing this show is, to counter program the nonsense that is out there. But this doesn't really give you a lot of the specific tools to
yes, yeah,
actually change that status. So like go from being an incel to actually being a functioning member of society that can get what he wants out of life. And that's why I'm selling a course on, no, I'm just kidding. But, like this, this is like, this should be step one. And then, step two is providing like an actual roadmap of what does it look like to change that? What does it look like to really actually find, presumably we're talking, mostly young heterosexual males. What does it look like to find a woman?
right, yeah,
Right, like, and
yeah,
what does it look like to build a life? And just because you can't do one of those things right now doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do either of them. And a lot of the advice is easy. It's easy stuff to do, but it takes strength. It takes like mental fortitude. And we talk a lot about
yeah,
like high IQ people. Guess what, man? You're not high IQ. No matter how low IQ the people you criticize are, you're not high IQ. You need to be high EQ. Like your emotional intelligence needs to be, that's something that you can get. You can't get much smarter. If you're 20 or 25 or even 30, you're about as smart as you're going to get. You might be able to like have more information, but like your capacity to process stuff isn't getting better. Like not dramatically, at least. Like my
yeah,
chess rating has not gone up in like 5 years. Like that's not how it works, guys. But your ability to like your emotional intelligence and your ability to like behave in these ways that are not like IQ driven is malleable, and you can and improve it. It's one of the things you can improve the most rapidly as well, and it's one of the things that will improve your relationships or the relationships with the people in your inner circle. No matter how
yeah,
small your inner circle is, if you can improve the relationships you already have using a roadmap that we'll work on and we'll put out as like the subsequent episode to this. If you can improve those relationships, you can gain new relationships and create new relationships and then improve those. And your concentric circles of people around you will increase such that eventually One of those relationships will be romantic in nature, and you'll be able to move it through and create a life with someone else, which hopefully is the goal for most young men. Even if it's not your goal now, hopefully you look into the future and you don't see yourself at 60 alone. You know what I mean? With like a golf buddy or something. Like, hopefully you see yourself at 60, like, or maybe 70 or 80, like on your deathbed in the nursing home next to your like loving wife that you've been with for 40 years. That's what I look for. That's what it would be like a badge of success in my book, is going through life with someone, having someone to experience it with, and deriving some sense of your happiness from that relationship. That is something that I promise you we can provide sound advice on in a way that the Manosphere simply can't. My qualifications are possibly not as great as many others, but there are a few things in life that I'm good at. And that is one of them. Is building relationships is something that I can do. And maintaining them is something that can be.
I agree. We definitely we'll do an episode on how to take everything we just talked about and apply it to your life in a meaningful way, especially in terms of being happy and maybe happy with a partner,
We can call it
particularly.
escape velocity. Like, what is it going to take to escape the gravitational pull of this sphere they call the Manosphere?
I like that. So I'll leave this with I'll end this with these last words here. If you feel yourself being drawn towards the loud, aggressive voices of the Manosphere, I want you to take a second and ask yourself, are these men actually happy, or are they just rich and angry? The path they are selling you is paved with isolation. It promises you power, but it leaves you in a world where you can't trust your friends and you can't love your partner without trying to conquer them. That isn't freedom. It's a self-imposed prison. Real strength doesn't require a victim. It doesn't require you to look down on women. It doesn't require you to hate people who are different. The world doesn't need more alphas fighting for the top at a crumbling hill. It needs men who are secure enough in their own skin to be kind, humble enough to listen, and brave enough to stand up for the disenfranchised. Don't let a curated algorithm steal your empathy. Choose the harder, more rewarding path of becoming a man of character, because that is the only version of masculinity that actually leaves the world better than you found it.